Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Guys, it is Saturday. And for those of you who do know, that means Saturday Nightmares live from upstate New York. For those of you who have not attended our live stream, it is Saturday night, 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do encourage you guys to hang out with us. We have a lot of fun. Experiences are shared. Theories are shared. It is unlike any other live stream in the community of paranormal research or cryptozoology. I can guarantee you that. Before we jump into this upload, though, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. The merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons and narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. An amazing book. If you guys have not read it, I honestly suggest finding a way of reading it. Kindle, library, or softcover. I don't know if there's a hardcover yet or not, but it is truly a book full of amazing facts and information. The key thing that I have focused on in that book is the Axelrod case, where he was sent to examine the two USS Nimitz video recordings, one released to the public. Shortly thereafter, he goes to Skinwalker Ranch and comes home to Virginia, has some very strange paranormal experiences. Well, he doesn't. His wife does, and his children do. Shadow men in their bedroom. Dogmen spotted by his wife, and two different occasions by his sons. And I looked more into who these folks were. Naval intelligence, their sons were not into cryptids, were not into the paranormal. They were into teenage stuff, like they didn't care about what we care about. They didn't want to know about what we know about. Why would they make something up like that? They didn't. They actually really saw this. We've been talking a lot about Dulce and these secret government programs. The second to last time I was up there, I was talking about how I really think that CERN has had their hand in taking from the paranormal, from opening portals, making deals with these Dracos, and such. Then I talked about a little bit about how Native Americans, prior to the settling of North America, had to deal with the Dracos in California, in New Mexico, in New York. There's a statement that was made by the Algonquins, which is in upstate New York. Let me find it real quick. That talked about these reptilians and underground bases. So on that day that I was up there, I had made mention of how quite possibly our modern day government back in the 50s, when things started to change, things really started to change in the 50s. We all know this. We all know that after Roswell, a little bit before, but primarily after Roswell, everything, technology just blew up. There's a reason for that. And we all know what it is. Pacts were made. International pacts with the Draco, you know. And I had made a statement saying, hey, what if our modern day government, along with these secret branches like CERN, NSA, Department of Homeland Security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, approached Navajo shapeshift or approached Navajo black magic shamans to learn about the shapeshifting Ye-Natalushi, Skinwalker. All day today I was thinking about that, or excuse me, yesterday. And I ended up reading a couple of excerpts and listening to an old podcast, or I guess talk by Tom Horn. And if you don't know who Tom Horn was, an amazing, brilliant man. He's since passed. Look him up, get his books. Just Steve Quayle, good friends with Tom Horn, or was. Both just unbelievably intelligent and in the know. Tom Horn made a statement about the Navajo, about the Anasazi, and how the Anasazi on this rock called Newspaper Rock had drawings or petroglyphs of reptilian aliens with a halo over their head. And giants and chimeras about the same time of what was going on in the Middle East, the biblical time. Tom Horn, I believe, I don't know his qualifications, and I probably should. I just know I've read 2-3 of his books, Steve Quayle's books. I think he's a doctor and a reverend or a priest or such. I don't know, but he is in tune with everything that we talk about. Just an amazing man, or was an amazing man. But so he's not trying to be blasphemous about anything on that side of the ocean. He's just saying, hey, there's a lot of stuff that really fits together. Reptilian, reptilian, because in the book of Enoch, the reptilians, or the watchers, were supposedly looked reptilian. Some. They didn't all look like these angels with flowing hair. And they, in turn, created the Nephilim. And then there was genetic experimentation done by the Watchers, which created Chimera. Same stuff that's written on this newspaper rock. So it's been going on for thousands of years. I've known it, I felt it, and I know you guys have too. But it all is starting to make a lot of sense. Aramaic, and something funny that I learned is people get the Nephilim word, the Nephilim, confused with, because in Hebrew it means fallen one, but that's not where the word Nephilim actually comes from. It comes from Aramaic, Nephilah, which means giant. So it's not from the Hebrew word, which confuses a lot of people because people are like, oh, it means fallen, so the Watchers must be the Nephilim. No, the giants are, which is interesting because two different languages have a very similar word, both meaning something different, but both fitting into the same category. There's no coincidence at all. I probably am not making sense at all, am I? But I don't know. I got a lot of information I want to share with you, and I just wanted to start the upload off with that. But underground bases in genetic engineering. What about claims made by UFOologists regarding these bases being used for genetic engineering? According to their assertions, it is in the lowest level, the 7th level of Dulce Base, that the extraterrestrial reptilians are engaging in this kind of experimentation. 6th and 7th. Again, mythology supports the premise Native American tribes across the country are the most vocal when it comes to this topic. The Apache, whose headquarters are in Dulce, the Navajo, the Hopi, have a long-standing tradition of men's creation and the emergence from beneath the surface of the earth. The Algonquins recount, thus did the lowest, most world cave become overfilled with living things, full of unfinished creatures, crawling like reptiles over one another in the blackness. Unfinished. Isn't that like, if we didn't know any better and we lived the life like our ancestors, living off the land, hunting, gathering, somewhat farming, like the Native Americans did, and we saw a chimera, would we think that'd be the best description? An unfinished creature. In this matter, they do not stand alone. Brosus, a Babylonian priest, tells of hideous creatures that inhabit this underground realm. He described men who had one body but two heads, some with legs and horns of a goat, and even some with hindquarters of a horse and the body of a man. In short, there were creatures in which were combined the limbs of every species of animal. These genetic experiments are, according to the reports from UFO advocates, being conducted by a group of reptilian beings in the lowest levels of the bases. Tom Castiello, a former senior security officer at the base, testified that the base at Dulce is a 7-level underground facility with the lower levels described as a series of natural caverns. It was believed by Castiello that these caverns were used by different extraterrestrial races in our remote past. In Hindu, the Naga, or serpents, once lived on land, but the great god Brahma sent them to live under the sea and in the 7th level of their underground realm called Patala. In Sumerian descent to the netherworld, Inanna is required to pass through 7 gates to finally reach the bowels of the underworld. Aztec legend says that the Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, went to Mictlan, the Aztec underworld, and created mankind using his own blood and bones of a previous race. Throughout mythology, the act of creating humanity is always associated with a specific group of gods and fertile gods. Fertile gods around the world are traditionally depicted as reptilian or amphibious in nature and appear in art as a blend between man and a fish or man and a snake. So I think that they got some of it right. I don't think they got it all right. Obviously, reptilians didn't create humanity. But if, once again, using that old world kind of view, you don't know what you know now. You wear a loincloth. You have to hunt your food. You only know what you know. And you see a bipedal reptilian come out, or you see something else come out, and it has immense more powers than you have ever seen. Wouldn't that almost kind of be like, is that the creator? Why are they creating, or if they've went down into their caves and spotted stuff. Also, during the Nephilim era of the biblical times, the Hopi, they had their caves very high up in these cliffs. They're cliff dwellings. Even in New Mexico, in Gila, where we know there's some strange stuff going on. Why were those caves so high up? Because the world was full of giants at one time. When the Watchers, the 200 Watchers, came from heaven. And they didn't fall. Essentially, they did not fall. If you really look and read the book, they did not fall. They were sent to earth by God. And then they either forgot their mission or just didn't care anymore. And if you think that if you don't agree with what I'm saying, look into that, because they did not fall. They were sent here by God. Anyway, I just thought that was fascinating because it all makes sense. It's all starting to make sense. Dulce is 7 levels. The 7 levels explained right there. Also, interestingly enough, there is talk about giants and other creatures with horns. In New York, in Western New York, if I'm not mistaken, in the 1800s, 1880 something, there was a giant skeleton found that had horns on its head. Crazy stuff. All right, let's get into a little more information now. So along with all of this, the Nephilim, the Reptilians, deep underground military bases, and I truly, truly believe, just from a couple of pages in Skinwalker at Pentagon, which I do think solidified what Victor has told us. Not all, but what's in that book, I, really kind of, whoa, they are using Dogman as a weapon of intimidation. Super soldiers, creation of super soldiers, on top of the genetic creation of chimera. The Reptilian taught our government, or the government, how to create super soldiers. The black op government, I guess, the one world government, NWO. I don't know how to call it anything, because when I say the government or our government, not all of our government is bad. There's that subcategory of our government that is just evil and only in it for themselves. Anyway, this I found interesting and I immediately wanted to share it with you guys. This is from James Cassbolt, Super Soldier, Project Mannequin. When I first went public with my experiences with an investigative journalist, I mentioned the fact that I had witnessed little gray Zetas around my bed on more than one occasion when I was a child. At this time, I would hear a roar in my head, which sounded like water, and I would feel like that I was very heavy, like I was being crushed. After these sensations, you would feel as if you were floating upward. I spoke with Preston Nichols about these experiences, and he told me that these are common physical symptoms of people during kidnappings. When my father went to prison in Spain shortly after I was born, my mother and I moved around the world traveling and living in countries like Canada, Australia, Spain, and other places. However, the clearest memory of these close encounters were in my room at my house on Recreation Road, Tilehurst in Berkshire, when I was a child. Events like this also occurred in my teenage years at this house, and I would often see geometric symbols in my third eye at night. I would do patterns of breathing, like hold my breath and speeding up and slowing down my breathing. When I did this, I would see these symbols in a ladder formation with one symbol on the top of one another and draw them on paper. Then I would get up, show these diagrams to my mom and stepdad, trying to explain them. As I controlled my breathing more and more, the ladder would grow larger with symbols. Years later, my mom would convert to Buddhism, and I once attended a meeting with her at the Tibetan Buddhist Center called Rigpa in London in my 20s, and I saw to my surprise that there was in this place a symbol which I believe was called the 8 auspicious signs, with geometric symbols and other symbols, one on top of another. This was almost identical to the ladder I had drawn in Berkshire when I was 10 years old. I later learned that these breathing techniques I was doing at the time were a form of Parna/yoga breathing, and I did not know anything about Yogan Buddhism when I was 10 years old. A couple of years before this, I had written a poem called The Boy Who Was Within Time, about a story of me looking for some kind of hole in the street in front of my house, which would allow me to travel to a different world, where I would meet non-human creatures who were my friends. This land was being ruled by an evil being called the Executioner, and these creatures needed leadership to help defeat him. In the story, we collected weapons and went to his castle and defeated the executioner. I find this interesting title for a poem since, according to scientist Stephen Hawking, the fourth dimension, the one next to our own, is time and can be evaluated by wormholes and jumping doors. In my Project Mannequin deprogramming efforts, I have discovered that I have undergone a major extraterrestrial abduction, followed within days by another military/NSA abduction every 5 years of my life since I was born. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, which I will talk about later. On my 30th birthday in December, I had a very bad flu, and it was very rare for me to be sick. I had a high temperature. I was disoriented. I spent some time alone in my apartment in St. Ives. I remember seeing strange, little beautiful creatures with blue skin and geometric symbols on their foreheads. As for seeing other non-human beings or night visitors in my room, I cannot recall any events occurring in my late teens or early 20s. However, as of the year 2000, these nighttime visits started happening again, with 7 close encounters that I can remember very clearly. These all took place since 2000 up until present day. First encounter. Now this is James Casbolt, MI6, part of the participant in Project Mannequin, Super Soldier Project. And he is now telling us about his experiences that he had with these very strange creatures. First encounter, 2001, St. Ives, Cornwall. I woke up paralyzed in the early hours of the morning with a tall being over 6 feet tall in my room. This being appeared to be tall gray or reptile, and I could see wing-like appendages on his back. It's difficult to describe in great detail as he seemed to be cloaked in some sort of thermo or invisibility camouflage and would disappear from sight and reappear. I felt a tremendous weight on my chest, and I can remember the feeling of when this same thing happened to me as a child. I was fully awake, but I couldn't speak or move a single muscle. Years later, I learned how to break these paralysis when these events occurred. I was screaming in my mind, "Get the off me!" The weight on my chest was increasing, and the being by this time had completely disappeared. Because of this, I couldn't tell where the entity was standing at this point. A voice in my head then told me, "Try and relax and visualize a pink light coming from your hands and heading in front of you." I did this, and I saw a pink light come out of me, and the weight on me was then lifted. When this happened, I managed to roll over to the front, and once again an enormous weight pushed my face into my pillow. I visualized a pink light coming out of my back, and the weight completely lifted off of me and the paralysis disappeared. Then I saw a flash of movement next to my window, which was closed. I looked into the night to see a large figure with wings flying. The next day, this beam of green light appeared in my room and stayed for a couple of minutes before disappearing. This could have been the positive energy that helped me break the paralysis, or it could have been something else. I've since discovered that the particle beam and the psychotronic mind control technology used by the NSA and MIEC, used for kidnappings and other things, gives green streaks to appear in the air. The green streaks are caused by a reaction of the air with the particle beam. Without a doubt, a lot of long-range psychotronic mind control technology has been used on me at night to activate sleep alerts, which wake up the moment I go to sleep. The moment I fall asleep or leave, these alters kick in, and I wake up in the middle of an altered state of consciousness, get dressed, and go and meet with the controllers of the Mannequin Project, where the programming and other things take place. I go home, undress, and go back to bed, and my front alter, everyday personality, thinks I've slept the night away, but I wake up feeling exhausted. This has happened on more than one occasion in recent years. This happened a couple of weeks after the incident with being in the bedroom with that green light. This being said he was from Pleiades star system. In a telepathic message he transmitted to me, I was instructed to have a camera ready and prepared. And when it appeared, I went into a kind of trance, began to write down the information I was receiving. Among the messages was an urgent message that I was to walk in from Pleiades named Michael, was an urgent message that I was a walk-in from the Pleiades named Michael, who had just arrived in this body, and James had decided to leave and remain in the cities of light in a star sector of Pleiades. I was told that Miguel had come to this planet from the Pleiadian spaceship orbiting this planet, and one of the early arrivals to help lead a mission in galactic battle. I was going to carry this message of truth and had to understand who I was, anchor my star body in this physical body, which finally happened in 2005. This being told to me in my dining room that he was living in James' memories, and he had to understand this. I was also told that Miguel was James/soulmate, and that we were braided souls that had contracted to exchange places or vectors in the galaxy before this physical conception of bodies. The actual exchange of location vectors occurred just before the events of the recent encounter, when I was self-destructive and suicidal in 2001. After the exchange occurred, my pupil changed sizes, with my right pupil becoming larger than my left, as well as other physical and mental changes, such as the increase of my IQ level. I recently came across a great book called Earth Angels by Doreen Virtue, PhD, that explains the walk-in, walk-out process very clearly. Souls usually spend a lot of time discussing their possible soul exchange. They do race rehearsals, where the walk-in soul performs tests of the new body and walk-out soul performs tests of the new body. Experience being free of the body, both parties must fully agree before the final process is done. Since the walk-in procedure cannot be canceled unless prior arrangements are made, both parties must assure that they really want this exchange to happen. And the decision is made to move forward. Then an intersection episode is established. This means that the walkout soul becomes involved in an attempt, an accident, surgery, or out-of-body experiment. And when the new soul awakens, there is no memory of the walk-in process. An amnesia effect occurs when the spirit moves from the fourth dimension of the spirit world, where time is not measured, and arrives from the third dimension of the terrestrial time and life. My second encounter occurred in 2003, Wiltshire. While staying in a house in Wiltshire, I woke up in the middle of the night with an albino Anunnaki male standing at the end of my bed. He was 6'3", with an athletic body, long shoulder-length, blondish white hair. He was smiling at me, but he didn't say a thing. I was over there trying to figure out if he was still dreaming or not, and I realized he was wide awake. He's talking as he's still there. He started moving. These entities appear to have some sort of interactive telepathic connect with me at these events and begin to behave differently depending on my knowledge of the situation and fear levels. When I realized that he was not dreaming, the Anunnaki male began to stretch his neck upward like a cobra, snaking it from left to right. As his neck elongated, like some sort of strange yoga technique, as he stretched his neck, he began to become abnormally long and thin, which was terrible to witness. Just then he shape-shifted into a large, muscular, humanoid reptile, which was even taller, but wingless at this time. I screamed, in terror, jumped out of bed, toward this being to attack it. This may sound unbelievable, but I just did it without thinking. When we were about to make contact, it moved its hand as if pressing something around the waist and disappeared. A contact with the intelligence community told me that Dracos, reptilians keep teleportation devices around their wrists and on their belts. Also, it's interesting to note that Barry King told me there is a huge underground MIEC complex beneath Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire. All right, so that was his first two experiences that he had with these entities after being deprogrammed from Project Mannequin. The last one I'm going to share with you was very interesting. Actually, I might, because a lot of these are long, but not really. All right, so the last two that I'm going to share with you are very interesting. My fifth encounter, so we've shared two. My fifth encounter after St. Ives, 2007, May 5th, 2007, St. Ives, Cornwall, after visiting Portreath Royal Air Force Military Base with 3S. We ended up parking outside in my car and looked at the main gate. I woke up with a man with blonde hair that looked like a Pleiadian was kneeling next to me, next to my bed. He seemed to be talking to me, but I don't remember what he said or what happened after this. 3S was staying in my living room, code name for someone. And it's pretty rare for me to have friends staying in my apartment. However, the last friend who stayed before 3S woke up with some kind of shovel mark on his bicep in the morning. It appeared that a piece of flesh had been removed, and we believe a DNA sample was taken from it. My friend's name, it was Jan, and later that day, his mother received a strange phone call from his uncle saying that he was worried about Jan, since he had a terrible dream the night before, in which Jan had become a kind of vampire. So after he actually had friends spend the night, he woke up with kind of like a weird kind of graft taken off his arm. But his uncle has a dream that his nephew turned into a vampire the same night that he had this graft taken off his arm while staying at his friend's house, who was a former MI6, former super soldier, abductee. His last encounter is quite eye-opening. Eighth recent encounter, September 18th, 2007, St. Ives, Cornwall. This encounter with a non-human was different from the others in that it was sort of fully interactive vision rather than occurring in this time and space. I was in my apartment at night when I experienced this vision. It was very real to me, and I could see, touch, smell, and hear as clearly as if I had been here. I found myself standing next to a house in the country with a tree and a stream by my house. I saw movement on one of the tree branches out of the corner of my eye and looked up and saw what I first thought was a large bird. On closer examination, I saw that it was a man with large wings connected to his back and long hair. He was bare-chested and sitting in the branch like a bird, with his body squatted and perfectly balanced. He looked back at me for a few seconds, repositioning his body to assure the posture I have from yoga, called tree pose. Then he flew from a branch like a bird and landed in the ground in front of the tree. He stood there for a moment and then waved his hand at me. I approached him and had a strong sense of goodness and strength coming from him. When I stood in front of him, I noticed his enormous wings were like that of an eagle in dark red. His shoulder-length hair, it was the same color as his wings. He had these things connected to his body that went over his shoulders and down his chest. They looked like long, thin gemstones, and some were white and others black. He was bare-chested, but had some type of pants on with bare feet and appeared to be in his 30s or 40s. As we stood there looking at each other for a moment, he said to me, "This tree belongs to you," and I was hoping to use it for a while. I didn't understand this cryptic statement, and I didn't know what to say. Then he told me that he was once human. My reaction to this was trying to understand this earthly terms, and I replied that he must have been used in the mannequin project and had been hybridized. The next statement was that the mannequin is trying to create a deity race of beings that are modeled after him. These beings have half human, half animal DNA, he said. I think the fact that this being was in a tree when I first saw it has something to do with the evolution of DNA and Kabbalah. I asked him if I could touch his wings, and he gave me permission. They were very beautiful, silky to the touch, and almost identical to those of an eagle, as mentioned before. I then ran my hands over the long gems connected to his shoulders and chest, which felt like polished quartz crystals. Then he showed me more visions in my mind's eye. In other places, I saw human women who were older than this winged man. She had blonde hair and was very beautiful. He told me that this was his mother and seemed to communicate telepathically with this woman in my vision, telling her that I was very interesting. He showed me visions of him flying in the sky like a bird and landing in the trees. As impressive as this being was, the experience seemed very normal to me. Then he told me that my daughter's psychic abilities were increasing, and he mentioned something about my mom trying to understand the truth. After this, we talked about the man called Wesley Payton. Wes was an NSA assassin who was placed on false charges and is now in prison. He is a human-animal-alien hybrid, and I'm friends with his wife. Wesley's role in this must be very important, and I feel that he will be revealed to me in the future. There will be more information about this man later. From my understanding, I believe that there is an interactive contact with some type of extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional being that have been called angels in ancient times. With the descriptions of the Draco, what if people described angels and demons in the past were describing the same beings engaged in some kind of ancient war with each other? So, what he essentially is saying is something that I don't say. I've said it to a few people on the channel, and they know. And the few of the people I've said it to agree. But what if what Caspel just said is in fact the real deal? Like these demons and angels, Pleiadians, Draco, demons, angels, are in fact demons and angels, but are in fact looked at by the older humanity as aliens. I'm not saying that I wholeheartedly believe it, but it does make sense if you think about it. And it can make sense. Not saying anything negative, but what if, the misinterpretation, like the humans that were before us saw these beautiful angelic men or women or who come down from heaven with these beautiful wings, the angels, and for some reason the humans, maybe that's where some dimensional place, Pleiadian, to get from heaven to here. And then the Draco, the reptilians, are the hellspawn. I don't know. But I like how Cassbolt just explained it, because it was pretty damn cool. But how up is it that an NSA assassin is human, alien, and animal hybrid? I mean, that, my friends, makes sense. So today's going to be a longer upload than normal. I got encounters to share, but I want to share some other cool things with you guys that go along with everything that we're talking about. It's all connected. This is super interesting. Super interesting. Navajo mythology, the twins, the monster slayer. Two of the most important characters in Navajo mythology are twin miracle performing sons of the white shell woman. This plate pictures a leader of the two first conceived, firstborn, whose father is the sun. So the white-shelled woman and the father would be the son, or the heavenly father. And Native Americans, the Navajo, just assumed, or being that the sun is the biggest and brightest and probably the most greatest thing in the heavens, imagine that as God, this white-shelled woman. Check this out. His name, one of the twins, slayer of alien gods, from an alien, ye gods to kill. By him, the assistance of his twin brother, were killed numerous bird, animal, rock, and human monsters, terrifying evils, who wantonly destroyed human life. When the spirit people came upon the earth from below, they made 6 sacred mountains, 4 on the distant horizon at the cardinal points and 2 in the center. The 2 brothers on the eastern slope, the 4th. First man took her home near where she matured in 12 days. She turned into a beautiful woman with superpowers. They're talking about the white-shelled woman. The firstborn, soon she found herself the proud mother of the 2 boys. The firstborn and the stronger came to be known as the slayer of alien gods. The other was known as born from water. Their prenatal life covered a period of only 12 days, and maturity was attained in 32 days after passing through the 8 changes, one of which came every 4 days. At the time, the earth was infested with great giants, foreign gods, who were rapidly destroying people. Of these, Yetso, big god, as large as a mountain, was only one in human form. The others were a man-eating bird, a rolling stone that crushed all in its path, a tracking bear, an antelope that killed without mercy, fearing lest some of these monsters learn of the presence of her and her sons, keeping them hidden in the mountainside under confinement. So she made them bows and arrows and let them play about, but never let them stray too far from home. The boys promised to obey, but not long afterward, because in reply to their questions, their mother told them she did not know who their father was. They became sulky and broke their promise. Going toward the east, they would go in search for someone who did know. When the small knoll along the way from home, they heard a whisper, "Shh! Are you afraid, my young brother?" The alien god slayer said. "No," one born from water quickly responded. 4 times they heard the whisper, and then 2 of the wind people appeared. "We saw you traveling eastward," they said, "and came to caution you. The land is cursed with alien gods who kill for pleasure. Beware of them.
Why do you journey thus alone without your father? Our father, alas, we know nothing of him, and are now starting to search and learn. Do you know who he is? Asked the boys. Yes, the sun is your father. But if you think to find him, you will have to travel far eastward and cross the wide, wide waters. The brother, whose name was the alien god killer, turned to his younger brother and said, let us go. With the sun overhead, being in fact of holy nature, the boys covered distance rapidly, and by mid-afternoon had passed well beyond the limits of their homeland. There they came upon an old woman sitting beside a ladder projecting from a hole. She asked them who they were and whither they were going. They told her to the sun. Whose sons are they, but whom they had never seen? So the woman is sitting by a ladder that is projecting a hole, a portal. And this is from Dr. Moses, or Mose, a Navajo doctor and theologian who was told this information by his great-grandfathers, who were told by his great-grandfathers. But the slayer of alien gods is one of the brothers' names. And they then hunted these giants down. How fucking cool is that? I mean, it really does. All of the history, if you think and you stop and you really just open your mind up and you take away the constructed, I can't look into something like that because it doesn't go along with what I believe. But if you just say, hey, you know what? I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to read something that might differ from what I believe, just to find a common ground. Native Americans, all of the tribes in North America, talk about a great flood that occurred around the same time the biblical flood happened. How would they know? They weren't there. They wouldn't know unless it all really did happen together and it all makes sense. Anyway, let's move on. All right, we're going to jump into some cryptid encounters. I know probably some of you are getting mad. Why aren't you talking about cryptids? You say Dogman encounters and paranormal research. This is neither. It's all of it. The other day, I shared with you guys 3 case files. And I listed them as case files because that's what they are. And the last case file was case file 30, where a gentleman had seen some reptilians. He was on a kind of on like a silo the military was attacking, and it came from the Dulce book. And I shared it with you, primary characteristics of the Greys. And someone asked me, where did you get that? Where did you get those from? And someone reached out to me and sent me these. He sent me the 3, which I thought was weird. He sent me 28, 29, and 30 case file. And they're all from different people. Like one was from Reverend Billy D. And that one was where the military black projects or operations. He was an officer in the military. And he talked about Area 51. I think I shared that on Thursday, or I think it was Thursday. And throughout these, it tells you all the case files and where they came from. Like case file 2, a parahuman serpent people. Case file 1, John Carpenter has kept close track of the abduction phenomenon. He is the director of the abduction research for Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, one of the largest and most credible organizations dedicated to scientific study. These are all information that deal with reptilian activity. And I've got them all. I've got the whole caseload right here. So I'm going to go get into that, not tonight, or not today, but eventually. So I'm going to share a couple of Dogman encounters right now, some other encounters. And then I might share this information or save it. But it talks about the time when the Nephilim ruled the earth or roamed the earth, and the Watchers were devious and up to no good and creating genetic monsters. Because not only were they forcing themselves upon the women of Earth, but they were also doing the same to the animals of Earth. All of them. Which is vile. And creating creatures like Dogman, like Bigfoot, Goatman. I don't know. All right, guys. So today's first experience, I shared a couple of these in the live stream. For those of you who are not in the live stream, I wanted to share these with you because they were pretty friggin' good. Back in the winter of 2001, my youngest son and I were on our way from Boise, Idaho to Medford, Oregon. We had taken a car trailer to his old place in Boise in order to haul his non-running Jeep to his new place in Medford. We hit an area of heavy snow in the southern Cascades at around 2 a.m. It took 45 minutes or so to get down the mountain. We had, of course, been drinking coffee to stay alert. About 25 miles west of the path, it became obvious that the last few quarts of coffee had to be drained. We stopped at a wide spot in the road near a summer tourist haunt that was deserted in the winter. There was a gas station and an ice cream joint on the west side of the road, closed this time of year, and no town or settlement within 30 miles. This is Tall Timber County, and unsettled. Across the road is a small parking area for the ice cream joint. It's paved and about 200 feet wide, 80 feet deep. I pulled in, and as I stepped out with my .45 on my hip, it occurred to me in a flash to grab my .590 Mossberg. Be a good idea. As we walked to the far end of the area to be well off of the road, the hair on my arms and the back of my neck stood on end. The area directly in front of us was open with a depth of 50 yards and 100 yards wide. The night was clear and cold. 8 to 10 inches of snow was on the ground. With the moon almost full, we could see quite well. While standing with my son about 15 feet to my right, I saw as if springing forth from the earth in front of us across the open area, 10 or 12 creatures, moving rapidly back and forth in a sort of thatched weave pattern. These things, not human men, close to 7 feet tall, bipedal with long arms, medium-length gray fur, and fast on their feet. I brought up the shotgun and slid the safety off as my son was drawing his .45. I don't know if I can adequately explain the overwhelming feeling of menace, but here goes. I'd been operating on pure instinct since I stepped out of the truck. The rotten feeling hit me the split second before things arrived. The feeling, instinct, was that we were prey, subject to a very bad death, and to be slaughtered and eaten. Not a logical process, gut feeling, and massively overwhelming. As they were moving about in front of us, more appeared and mixed among them, all the while running about as fast in front of us. My son and I were backing toward the truck. I would not present my back to them, and some of them peeled off right to left in an encirclement movement. They were rolling in fast from the sides now. I could smell and feel their presence. We got to the truck loaded on adrenaline and ready to kill, as we both knew we were in grave danger. We piled into the truck, locking the doors. I had my keys ready. As I neared the seat, I had the engine lit and transmission in gear and gas pedal mashed in one motion. Adrenaline is great stuff. As we fled, something very close by let out an undulating scream of rage and pain. I believe one or more of the group had gotten really close to us in their pursuit, and I may have run one of them over. Yeah, they were that close. We rolled onto the highway, and I told my son to watch the bed of the pickup as well as the trailer. He had already indexed to the rear with the shotgun. We hauled off for at least 20 miles before the feeling of grave danger started to abate. The feeling that nailed both of us, as we discussed soon afterward, was one of being prey. I am not easily led, and neither believe or disbelieve all the Bigfoot, ghost, and werewolf stuff. In fact, I'm a skeptic. My son was speaking with a coworker 6 months later who had grown up in Prospect, Oregon, 30 miles south of Union Creek where the incident took place. He asked if he had ever heard of any strange goings-on in that area. The coworker went ashy white and pretty much retold the above tale. He says to avoid the place at night. A family friend, a 25-year retired police officer, not given to flights of fancy and an excellent observer, had an experience very similar from a year before. I told my wife of the event, and of course she looked at me at the beginning as though I had developed a third eyeball in the center of my forehead. That was from shock, because she did believe me, but she did not wish to hear any of the details. She said the experience gave her chills. Me too. As I write this out, the hair on the back of my neck and forearms are standing straight up. I have not gone back to explore, and would not with any large group of shotgun and flamethrower-equipped men with me. My son and I are both sane, sober people, and not taken to hysteria. We were very wide awake as things transpired. We saw and smelled what was out there. As a sidebar, neither of us heard footfall from these creatures. They were silent until I hurt one of them as we were getting out of there. To my knowledge, and I have researched, there is nothing that matches these creatures unless one considers old legends or folklore. Today's second encounter. It was back in January of 2017. I was living at home in northern Minnesota. My parents started being more strict on me as I was a recent high school graduate, and when I would come home, the door was usually locked. On nights like this, I would just sleep in my truck. On this particular night, it was about minus 17 degrees, and I was a little worried about freezing up after shutting off the truck, so I texted my friend Jay to see if he wanted to tag along. Jay and I took off driving around in the night until after midnight, when we decided to drive up to a base of the local mountain and park the truck for the night. I quickly nodded off, but awoke to Jay nudging my shoulder 20 minutes later, saying he felt like we were not alone and felt like we were being watched. I was too tired at first and told him we would be all right, but he persisted. I relented, so I drove toward town, and by now the time is close to 1 a.m. I found a turn off the highway after driving for about a mile and decided to park on a narrow trail that had been snowed in. I drove about halfway down the snowy trail before I decided the snow would be too deep. We parked, shut the truck off, and closed our eyes. My eyes had been closed for 5 minutes or so, but now I had the feeling like we were being watched. Not sure if Jay had been asleep. I opened my eyes to check, and what I saw was horrifying. As I looked through the front windshield, I could see a giant humanoid prowling in the bush line 50 feet in front of our truck. It was coming closer, and my eyes were stuck to it. It got closer, and now I could see it through the passenger window. It felt like it knew I was looking its way. As it was creeping up to the truck, I could tell Jay was watching by now. He also was frozen in fear. The thing disappeared from view, creeping toward the rear of the vehicle on the passenger side. We were both still in our seats and hadn't said a word. I even stopped breathing for a bit, I'm sure. Suddenly, the rear suspension began to lower as this thing climbed into the back of the truck bed, ever so slowly. I could see Jay watching it, but I was too terrified. I couldn't look. This humanoid was over 9 feet tall. I was driving a Chevy Silverado, so the thing sat down like it was climbing onto a bench seat. As it sat, it began to hunch over and then lower its head into view through the back window. It had large yellow eyes, its skin dark, almost black. It peered in. Then Jay freaked out. It quickly jumped from the bed, leaving the truck shaken. For some reason, when it jumped off, my truck lights flashed 3 times, each flash brighter than the last. Jay screamed, "Go, go, go!" I tried starting my truck, but it wouldn't turn over. I tried the key back and forth multiple times with no success. Eventually, it started. I never did figure out why the ignition failed to turn over. I hauled ass about 100 yards down the trail until I realized I'm not going to be able to turn around in the snow. I stopped, shifted into reverse, and when I looked back up, I noticed my spotlight was in the back seat. So I told Jay I was going to look for whatever jumped out of my truck. He was quite reluctant, but I didn't care. I had to see it again. I parked the truck and began scanning the brush line toward where we saw it flee. I caught a glimpse of it. I was scanning from left to right. At first, I only saw the lower half and past it. Then Jay said, "Did you see it?" I slowly returned the light back to the creature and examined it from top to bottom. It was horrible. The claws hung at a lower leg area, even with the creature being fully erect. The fingers were at least a foot long. It was skinny and looked malnourished. I looked at its crotch area and there was nothing there. It was just smooth. Its chest and abdomen looked elongated, but very muscular, skinny too. I then brought the light to its face, and what I saw is when my heart dropped. It was looking at my eyes, even with the spotlight in its face. It smiled with its mouth, only to show me sharp, crooked teeth. It then backed up while facing us and slowly disappeared into the woods. You know, this may make me sound like a bit of a Sally, but when I was up where Tom Mezek disappeared that night, and I was recording the 20 minutes or whatever that I was up there, 25 minutes, and the 12 minutes that were distorted, I really actually talked about how freaked out I was. And, I felt like something was out there other than a Dogman or a Bigfoot, and not like a crawler either. And I really do think that once we start to learn about these creatures, we are never the same. We will never look at the woods the same. We will never look at anything the same. A news article. We will never look at it as the same anymore. Speaking of news article, really quick, the last year, the Las Vegas alien UFO occurrence where the video was shot. Police saw it. Young man named Angel saw it in his backyard. Come to find out, video analysis of the video and everything else, the video that Angel did shoot, the one that's on the news, not the one that's on TikTok with a fake alien there, but the real one that's on the news, they are saying that is real footage, that it's not edited. Obviously, the one with the 8-9 foot alien next to the fence is, because there was never an alien there. It was behind the truck. But it just goes to show that, like people making fake videos to get views of this creature. A year later, a video analysis of the original video, the one that's not doctored, comes to find out that it is real. But yet, because someone messed with it and monkeyed with it for views on TikTok, kind of gives it less credence, Really bothersome. Anyway, let's get into the next experience. I shared this on the live stream this Saturday. I really liked this one. I started the live stream off with this one, actually. I think it's very interesting because it doesn't fit into a certain category when talking about, well, you'll see what I mean. LM, name redacted, lived in Homer, Alaska between 2013 and 18. And in that time, she observed numerous bizarre creatures. The house she lived in, on that small street, was surrounded by tall trees, most of which have since died or were chopped down. One night, she was in her room hanging out with her boyfriend. She had noticed strange movement and asked to use his binoculars, only assuming she had noticed something previously and requested him to bring them. When she looked through the binoculars toward the trees, she spotted something strange, a little man hopping from tree to tree. It seemed to be dancing in the trees. She noted that it didn't seem to be worried about gravity, falling, nothing, just hopping around. A month later, she started noticing more of these creatures, eventually hundreds. She feared she may be losing her mind since no one else was seeing them. Her boyfriend did not initially believe her until one night he saw them himself. She further noticed the trees that they would hop around in would slowly start to die. She began to suspect that the creatures climbing on them were somehow causing them to die. When she later returned to the location in 2021 with the crew of the Discovery Channel while shooting a TV show called Aliens in Alaska, she was shocked to see a patch of forest near her old home was dead. The trees were rotting and black. I don't know what they were, but I don't think they're from here. I believe they were aliens, she told the producers of the show. In 2018, partially because of the strange incidents around her home, she and her family decided to move to Kodiak. She has not seen them since. Curiously, these little men-like creatures look an awful lot like the crawler. So, what doesn't fit in? Well, when we talk about little men, we automatically, people assume like gnomes, fairies, fae. That old guy from England who everyone was worried about because he stopped making videos on YouTube, but he just needed a break. He's like 80 years old, 70 years old, needed a break, but people thought he got abducted by 5-inch little men. These little, they look like Fraggles or whatever, doozers. But these creatures looked like a crawler, but smaller. That's just creepy. Crawlers in of itself, I believe 100% were a genetic creation by the aliens, the Draco, in these dumbs, using alien-human hybrid as a security tool. Let's move on. I'm sure most people laugh when they hear experiences like this, but I just can't. I was face to face with what I can only describe as a werewolf in 1987 here in southern Illinois. I was only 10, but I know what a big dog looks like and actually owned a huge St. Bernard at the time. And this thing dwarfed him. I was walking alone down a road that parallels some thick woods when I heard movement in the brush. I stopped looking toward the noise, and to my absolute terror, a huge black wolf-looking head came out of the brush staring at me. I don't know if it was on 2 or 4 legs, but it was taller than I. I was only 10, so 4.5 feet. Suddenly, it came bursting out of the woods towards me, and I thought I was dead. I don't know what happened at that point, but it obviously did not grab me. All I can remember from that part is that it was face to face, and then it wasn't. My mom remembers seeing me running home with a look of terror on my face, so she met me outside. She knew something bad had happened, but didn't know what it was. She says I was shaking uncontrollably and I had wet myself, and just kept saying, "A werewolf tried to take me." She says that she didn't know what I encountered because I was a tough kid who always was outside and was not prone to making up stories or lying. She says the next day I brought a book home from school titled Meet the Werewolf. I was obsessed with anything werewolf related. Of course, I wouldn't go outside for a long time after that, even when all of the kids were outside. We moved the next year to the city 100 miles away, and I got back to normal again. I moved back to that same rural town when I was 18, and I've lived here ever since. It's a small town on Rend Lake in Jefferson County, Illinois. I know what I saw, and I'll never forget its face. It was not a dog. I go into the woods quite a bit alone, and sometimes I do get worried, but I also carry a gun just in case. Be safe when alone in rural areas because dogmen are real. My wife had a daytime encounter with what she called a 7-foot-tall black werewolf standing on 2 legs in 2001, 5 miles from where I had my encounter. The only difference is she was driving and had the relative safety of being in a car. It proved to me that these creatures do exist and are in our area, so at least I know to be careful while in the woods instead of being like everyone else who has no clue until they are face to face with one. It's scary to know that they are real, but I think it's better to be aware of them so I know to take precautions in the woods. And I tell anyone who will listen despite being laughed at. But those who know me best know that I'm not crazy, and I do not make up stories or lie. I think telling them will keep them out of harm's way. I think telling people about these things will keep them out of harm's way, or at least make them be a little more cautious about being out in the woods alone. My uncle had a Bigfoot encounter back in '81 while on the outskirts of the Shawnee National Forest. He never went back and is afraid to be outside after dark, if there are woods around. He's 60 years old now and is still scared of things that he says don't exist. He's a huge guy himself, but is terrified of seeing this thing again. The funny thing is he actually laughed at me when I told him about my werewolf-looking thing. That almost got me. I think that he thought I was joking at first, but I told him, just like the Bigfoot that you imagined, changed his tune. He said it was probably a Bigfoot that I saw, but it was most certainly not. It was a giant black wolf that was taller than I, not a gorilla-looking thing. All right, so right before the couple of encounters that I shared, I said I had this thing that I wanted to share with you guys about giants and possible genetic warfare created with the Watchers, the Nephilim, and etc. I'll share this, then one more encounter, and we'll end the upload like that. In the Voices from Legendary Times, I explain how many ancient sources, such as the Bible and numerous other religious and historical texts, mention a time in distant past wherein giants walked the earth. Who were these mysterious beings of great stature and incredible strength? Why and how did they disappear from the surface of the earth? Giants have often been considered legendary figures created by the ancient imagination, representing a symbol of human power. Many scholars claim giants never existed. If that is correct, how do we explain all the giant skeletons which have been unearthed worldwide? No, there is so much more to this. Giants were by no means fictional. They did exist and played a vital role in the history of mankind. Remarkable global archaeological evidence clearly corroborates the existence of humanoid giants in prehistory. Sometimes scientists have difficulties accepting the fact that giants once ruled this earth. Confirmation of giant skeleton bones, often 8 to 9 feet in height, is the threat to certain members of the scientific world. Accepting the existence of giants is accepting that history is not as we have been told. Still, can we really afford ourselves to ignore skeletons of gigantic size simply because they conflict with their idea of evolution? In search of the truth and origin of man, we should always be prepared to modify current scientific theories as new discoveries are made. Unfortunately, at present times, the academic world prefers to take no notice of fossils and artifacts which do not support the already established orthodox theory of human history. Maybe this attitude will change in the future. It would certainly be in the best interest of the public. The pre-Adamic race. Some are familiar with a theory of the pre-Adamic race and the creation of races that once in remote times inhabited the planet. Giants are of great significance in history of humanity. How far back in the distant past can we trace these giants? The Bible tells us several interesting things. Genesis 6:1-4. 6:1. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the ground, and daughters were born unto them. 6:2. That the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them as wives of their choice. 6:3. And Jehovah said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for that he also is flesh, yet shall his days be 120 years. 6:4. The Nephilim were in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of man, and they bore child with them. The same were the mighty men that were of old, and men of renown. We were informed that giants, the Nephilim, the fallen ones, existed in a world as well as after the great flood. It is always stated that God created Adam, the first human being from whom the rest of the humankind originated. It is indeed true that God did create the first Homo sapiens, but we should not neglect the pre-Adamic race, which was of great importance and had significant influence on the development of our history. The pre-Adamic race, a civilization that existed before Adam, is mentioned in a number of historical texts and myths of different cultures. The earliest accounts of giants occur in times before Adam. In those days, a group of celestial beings descended from the heaven. These divine scientists manipulated the genes of various kinds of animal life, and as a result, they genetically engineered a race of humanoids of gigantic stature. These were the first giants, the pre-Adamites. According to the Bible, those who descended to earth and mated with the women of earth were the fallen angels, or watchers, a group of 200 high-ranking divine beings. The giants, referred to in Genesis, are thus the result of interbreeding between humans and the fallen angels. The accounts of the Watchers and their giant offspring are described in more detail in the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. Unfortunately, the Council of Laodicea, the Catholic Church, banned both books and numerous others in the 4th century. From the Book of Enoch, R.H. Charles version, we learn more about the sin of the Watchers and the giants they produced. chapter 6 of the book of Enoch, R.H. Charles version. 1. It came to pass when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. 2. The angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose our wives, and among the children of the men. 3. And begot us children. And Semhaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not. Indeed, agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of great sin. And they all answered to him, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations. 5, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swear they all together and bound themselves. 6, the mutual imprecations upon it. And they were in all 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn. 7, they bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And the names of their leaders, Samlazaza, their leader, Arklaba, Remel, Kokobal, Temal, Ramal, Daniel, Ezekiel. 8, Aramis, Batril, Anal, Sam, Spiel, Saturil, Turil. These are the chiefs of the tens. Chapter 7. And all others together with them took upon themselves wives, and each chose himself one. And they began to go in unto them and defile themselves with them, and they taught them charms, to the enchantments and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and bare great giants, whose height were 300 ells, who consumed all the inquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them, and devoured mankind, and they began to sin against birds, beasts, and reptiles, and the fish, and devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid against the lawless ones. The same story is confirmed in the book of Jubilees, R.H. Charles version, chapter 5 of the book of Jubilees. 1. It came to pass when the children of men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the angels saw them on a certain year of this Jubilee, and they were beautiful to look upon, and they took themselves wives of all whom they chose, and they bare unto them sons, and they were giants. And lawlessness increased on the earth, and all flesh corrupted its way, alike men and cattle, beasts and birds, and everything that walks the earth. All of them corrupted their ways and their orders, and they began to devour each other. The lawlessness increased on the earth, and every imagination of the thoughts of all man. Thus evil continually. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, and all flesh had corrupted its orders, and all were upon the earth had wrought all manner of evil before his eyes. And he said that he would destroy men and all flesh upon the face of the earth, which he had created. But Noah found grace before the Lord's eyes. Genetic experiments. Although it is said that the beauty of earth's women tempted these fallen angels, it is worth considering whether fallen angels did not have special purpose for creating offspring of giant stature and immense strength. We do know that one of Yahweh's greatest concern was genetic purity and perfection. The intermarriage between human and divine beings, which continued throughout this period, was naturally a threat to Yahweh's well-ordered creation. The ancient master race of men created by the Watcher was against Jehovah's plan for the earth, in which each human being and animal was to reproduce after its own kind. The subject is discussed in genetic engineering in ancient times. A provocative yet realistic theory for those who are open-minded is that the giants were in fact a result of genetic experiments, just as the Homo sapiens. The giants were genetically manufactured by combining DNA of various pre-existing animal species. Higher individuals from outer space guided this creation process. The Bible is filled with evidence of extraterrestrial contact, clearly proving that Yahweh and his angels were in fact highly advanced beings from outer space. They visited our planet on several occasions. These ancient astronauts were responsible for bringing life to the earth and for creation of modern man. The giants possessed superhuman powers. Their role was to rule over planet Earth and the Homo sapiens. It was an attempt by the fallen angels, the group of spacemen who rebelled against their leader Yahweh, to wipe out the Homo sapiens. The giants were superior to the Homo sapiens in every aspect. They were not only of great size and strength, but they also possessed the ability to develop advanced tools and weapons and had astronomical knowledge. In the book of Enoch we learn, "And Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, shields, breastplates, made them known, the metals of the earth and the art of working them, bracelets and ornaments, and the use of autonomy, and the beautifying of eyelids and all kinds of costly stones. And there arose such godlessness, and they committed fornication, and were led astray, and became corrupt in all ways. Samhaza taught enchantments and root cutting. Armoros, the resolving of enchantments. Barajal taught astrology. Kokabal taught constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Arquil, the signs of earth. Shemziel, the signs of the sun. Suril, the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. The giants' knowledge and technical skills were given to them by their creators, the Watchers. The Nephilim procreated not only among themselves, but created offspring with the Homo sapiens. The offspring of the Nephilim were giants known as the Gibram, heroes of old, men of renown, which are mentioned in Genesis 6. The Gibram were not as tall or powerful as the Nephilim, but they were nevertheless a dangerous warrior race. At the end of this period, Yahweh saw the pure Adamic line of Homo sapiens was almost extinct. The supergiant beings walked the earth, had an almost lifeless lifespan. Their extraordinary powers became stronger day by day. In time, they became not only a threat to the earth, but also to Yahweh himself. Yahweh realized the rebels, the fallen angels, were winning the genetic warfare. His own creation, Homo sapiens, were being wiped out. The deluge, a new beginning. Legend and myth and sacred texts from all over the world tell about how God was displeased with the human's sinful behavior and decides to send floods for punishment. Almost every tribe and ethnic group in the world possesses memories of an event called the deluge, or the Great Flood. The universal flood is a fact, and it did occur. The majority of giants were destroyed in this cosmic catastrophe known as the Great Flood. The ancient catastrophe, which was of the greatest kind, ended this world, forcing the gods, Yahweh, his space fleet and rebelling angels to flee Earth temporarily. This was the time when the gods split the earth, or the fallen angels. After the great flood, when the waters receded, the mighty gods from outer space returned. Yahweh and his fleet were determined to repopulate the earth, but they were not alone. The fallen angels survived the cataclysm. The Watchers returned to the planet, and the rebellion against Yahweh entered a new phase. The mighty giants were recreated. We encounter them again in scriptures. This time, they are called Raphaim, Zuzim, Imim, Horim, and more. Genetic warfare between Yahweh and his rebels continue. So, you don't have to, this is just information. But God, Yahweh, is sitting in heaven watching what's going on. These watchers corrupting humanity. And these giants are created. These other creatures are created. And like that end said, it is still going on. Dogman is a creation not like us. We are in the mirror image of God. Dogmen aren't. Bigfoot most certainly isn't. The crawlers most definitely aren't. But what do they resemble the most? The fallen angels, the fallen ones, the reptilians, the evil. I don't know. I just think it's all interesting, and it all is starting to connect. I never really did. When I started to research back in 1994, wow. I thought by putting God into the research was dumb, to be honest. And it isn't until maybe the last 5 years that I wasn't closed-minded about it. I was a little bit, but I still took in the information and put it by my puzzles. But none of the pieces fit my puzzle yet. And now they do. And that's why I say keep the information, store it for when you're putting your puzzle together. You might need that piece later. It might not fit now, but later it will. And I am glad that I was open-minded about it. At first, honestly, 10 years ago, no, I wasn't. I really wasn't. I'd say God has nothing to do with this. Religion has nothing to do with this. But it does. It's all connected. All of it. And you know that. Just the same as I. It's so interesting. Anyway, with that, one last encounter. I have investigated the woodlands near my village north of Connick Chase in Staffordshire, United Kingdom. I have found numerous tree structures, tree breaks 8 to 12 feet off the ground, arched over trees whose tops had been anchored down under logs and scrub. Large and small crossed over arched trees, X structures, suspended young trees, and tangled masses of branches suspended off the woodland floor. I've discovered a variety of indistinct footprints, ranging in the sizes of 8 to 12 inches long. In February of 2021, at approximately 9:30 in the morning, I had just parked. I was standing outside in the process of putting my walking boots on when my attention was drawn to a small area of woodland, maybe 300 meters away. I saw the head, upper body, and legs down to the knee of a large bipedal hairy creature. It was in the process of watching a group of pheasant in the adjacent field. Attracted to an area where the farmer had deposited piles of silage and animal waste, this hairy creature turned to his right from standing position and took 4 long strides with its arms swinging before entering the dense thicket of holly. It strolled between 2 large ancient trees. Its lower legs were hidden between the piles of silage/animal waste. The hairy beast had great bulk to its body and no neck, with a good-sized head, whose facial features were indistinct due to the distance. It had long muscular arms, the hands reaching to its knees. The stride was smooth, the creature's back slightly sloping forward. There was no rise nor fall of its body as it moved. The color of the hairy body was mixed brown, but it had numerous patches of beige and honey-colored hair about its head, shoulders, and parts of its back. A malted appearance. The paler areas were indeed hair, it seems, but not bald. Had it been for the pale color of the form, its movement I may not have noticed. The paler color stood out markedly against the dark green holly that the hairy form entered. Had the body been black or brown, this creature may not have been noticed. I rushed to the area of the woodland, camera and binoculars in hand. Between the silage and waste and the woodland was a barbed wire fence. The posts were 4 feet high. The hairy man stood and moved between the posts. From the fence post height, the estimated height of this creature would be approximately 7 feet in height.
And there you have it, folks. I do hope you all enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I also hope to see you all at the live stream. We do have a lot of fun. Guys, thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.